Welcome to the Journey Podcast, the podcast that's all about you. The podcast that interviews interesting guests and listens to their journeys of where they've been, where they are now, and where they are going. Well, welcome to the Journey Podcast. And today I'm very excited to have one of my favorite marketing gurus with us today, Patrick Zangardi. And what has always stood out to me with Patrick Zangardi was his last name. And that's really how I remembered him. And I think we'll talk about that more in today's episode, but is how memorable, because I met him at this kind of, I kind of felt like it was a little bit of a sketchy event I went to, sponsored by LinkedIn. And I don't remember anybody else from that night except for it was a couple of weeks later, and I'm thinking, and I was like, Zangardi, why does that name stick in my head? And so I ended up connecting with him on LinkedIn, and we ended up having sitting down and having coffee and getting to know each other. And he's now actually the marketing guru consultant for my company, Astoria. So thanks for being with us today, Patrick. It's great to always have some time to spend with you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and thanks for the introduction. It's my pleasure to be here. I love seeing you do this, and I love podcasts in general, so it's an honor to be on. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much. So the Journey Podcast is all about you, Patrick, and so we've spent a lot of time talking about me. So I'm excited today to hear more about you. Yeah. And so for our listeners, for the audience, can you tell them a little bit about your business, what you do, and the value that you add to them?
Absolutely, yes. So I run Zangardi Studio along with my wife, Vanessa. She and I have been in business together for really for many years in a variety of side businesses and business ventures that have come and gone throughout the years. And most recently, and I think most successfully, we've been running Zangardi Studio since 2018. Zangardi Studio is a marketing agency. We're located in Cleveland, Ohio. And what we do is we help brands tell their story. And I think that our big value differentiator is that we really work to be an extension of our clients' marketing team. And we help them punch above their weight level, punch above their weight class. I can't believe I got tongue tied on my own little tagline there. But our goal at the end of every single day is to look back at what we've done that day or that week and feel proud of what we've done with our clients and help them to get a step closer to their goals and to knock some items off of their marketing to-do list.
Yeah, and that's awesome. I know you guys have added a lot of value to our brand. I'm always interested, I know you from, I've only known you for this short time since you've had Zangardi Studios. So how did you get into the role you're in right now as owner operator with Vanessa of Zangardi Studios? Tell us a little bit more about that journey to here.
Absolutely. So I would say this entrepreneurial journey has been 10 plus years in the making. I graduated from college in 2010, and all through college, I had little side projects, kind of ways to scrounge up a little bit of change for beer and pizza while I was in college. And my wife, Vanessa, she was my girlfriend at the time. But she had those same entrepreneurial tendencies as well while we were in school. For Vanessa, as a few examples, she did hair and makeup for friends. She did house cleaning. She did this and she did that. And for me, I was more along the lines of doing creative services while I was in college as well. I did photography, things like senior portraits, family photographs, things like that. And I also bought and sold camera equipment, just, kind of a little things here just to be able to, scrape a few pennies together and be able to put some food on the table. And, let's be a little bit more honest, a little bit of beer on the table, during the weekend party nights. After college, I began a career in the marketing consulting world, working in digital agencies. My first job out of college was at a small startup in Toledo, Ohio, called Outdoor Business Network. And what the company did, they've since been acquired and have shifted focus. What the company did at the time was we helped small retailers in the outdoor and the shooting sports industries to have e-commerce websites that would help them to compete with some of the big brands like Bass Pro Shops or Dick's Sporting Goods and brands of that nature. This was well before Shopify. I'm talking 2010, 2009.
Wow.
Shopify didn't exist to the level that they do now. E-commerce at even Amazon for the Amazon FBA, that didn't really even exist to the level that it did now. So the company that I worked for helped the small mom and pops, I always called them like Bill's gun shops, to sell products online, whether that's hunting gear, whether that's firearms, fully compliant with all national and state ordinances and laws. And we helped small businesses to market online in the pre-Facebook, the pre-Shopify, the pre-internet kind of marketing days. And that's really where I cut my teeth in sales. That's where I cut my teeth in working with small business. And that's where I really started to learn, how does the web work, both from a marketing and branding perspective, as well as from the actual technical e-commerce website development perspective.
Yeah, so you had to be like super creative, because there's a lot more to that than just, especially in that day and age, it wasn't as easy as just reselling stuff like you can today. Maybe for some of our listeners who have no concept of what it was just a decade ago to try to sell online.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal product at the time. It evolved over time, over the year or two that I was at the company, and then in the years since I left. The technology behind it was cutting edge for the time, and I would say it's even pretty cutting edge for today's time if we were to look back. The founder of the company really had a great vision for helping these small business owners, and it was, as I said, a really kind of formative point of my career, and it's where I learned a lot.
Wow, that's awesome. So then after you left there, you went out on your own, or where did you head off to then?
Yeah, so that job was in Toledo, Ohio. That's where I went to college as well. And I worked there for about a year or so. And Vanessa, at the time, she was my fiance. So in between college and graduating, we got engaged. And she was working for Sears, and she got a transfer from the location in Toledo to a location in Cleveland. So I went in, I'm like, man, this is my first job. Things are going pretty good. I like what I'm doing, and thought I had to quit, right? I went and talked to my boss. I was all nervous and said, hey, man, my fiance, she got transferred. I'm going to be moving in about 60 days. He's like, okay, so like, you don't have to quit. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm not driving. He said, no, we'll just work remote, just work at home. So he gave me a laptop, got my, my VoIP line set up, got the nice mic and headphones and all that. I was in sales. That's
so
what my role was.
This is what, 2012,
This was
2011?
2011.
Yeah. So you're like cutting edge, work from
Yep.
home pre-COVID, right?
Pre-COVID, man, by a long shot. So I did that for about 6 months. I just moved to Cleveland. I was living in a suburb called Lakewood at the time. And I was working out of the second bedroom in our apartment and making calls all around the country, doing pre-Zoom. I was doing go to meeting and go to webinar events.
Oh man, I'm so sorry.
Every once in a while I had to use Skype, and it was a technology nightmare, but it taught me how to work remote. It taught me how to relate with people. It taught me how to kind of, set my own internal boundaries around my work and life balance. And yeah, so that was kind of my first foray into both working in a small business, working for small business owners, and working remote. After that, so the time in between me leaving that job and starting where I am now, I worked for a small marketing agency in Cleveland called Incivia. I worked there for about 5 years. And when I started the firm, it was as like an account executive, account manager role. I bounced around in different roles in that firm, from client side to more production, project management side. And after about 5 years, I left that agency to work for another small company doing sales. And that was in about 2017. Worked there for 6 months, 8 months, and realized, this really isn't a cultural fit from what I want to do in my life long term, and ended up kind of making the jump into entrepreneurship in January 2018. So there's kind of a long arc there, but during that entire time from 2011 when I was working at Outdoor Business Network until 2018 when I started Zangardi Studio, I was also working as a freelance photographer, freelance designer. We were doing wedding photography on the weekends, and that really kind of started to make life busy. It started to make me realize I'm enjoying working on my own, like building my own kind of career, my own destiny. And when things started to look like, okay, I can make a go of this, my wife gave me the push, and she said, "Hey, it's time for us to jump off this platform and figure out the parachute, or how to assemble an airplane or a glider on the way down." And that's what I did. Put my 2 weeks notice in, had a little bit of income and accounts receivable coming in from my wedding photography business with Vanessa. And 4 years later, here, just about 4 years later, here I am today,
Yeah,
still doing it.
that's awesome. And probably through that time, probably added. You have kids, correct? So
2 kids,
had
yeah.
some kids come along in that period of time. So I'm sure work from home gives you that flexibility as well with your own business.
It certainly does. Yeah. So we have 2 kids. I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, and working from home is really great. Luckily they're both in-person school now that we're not doing those restrictions. There was a time for about a year or so in between, like pre-COVID, where I had an office, and I did the whole driving the kids to school, going to work, having meetings, going home from work, and it just felt very much like a standard kind of office role. But when COVID came on, kids were at home, everybody else in the world was at home, and I went back home as well. And quite honestly, Nate, I realized like working from home's great. So I let the lease expire on our office and moved into our home, and here I am today. So we use co-working studios when we need meeting space, and I travel to clients. But for the most part, I work out of the home office, and it does really well for us.
Yeah, that office space is generally not everybody needs office space these days. I think COVID
Yeah.
has definitely taught us that. So through that journey that you've come to, what's one thing that you probably didn't expect, like an unexpected turn through that period of time?
Yeah. So I would say that the thing that stands out the most to me about unexpected, kind of gotchas or anything like that is more on the mindset and the less physical side than it is on the like physical, oh, whatever. I think that the biggest learning I had to come to was that work doesn't have to look like what work was when I was an employee,
Mm,
right? So when you're an employee, you've got a time that you have to be somewhere, a place that you have to be, and you're kind of given a roadmap or a path. As an entrepreneur, it's nothing like that. It's what you make it to be. You can work when you want to, how you want to. You don't have expectations so much from somebody else that's imposing them upon you. It's your own expectations that you have to manage. So I went from working for somebody else and enjoying what I did to working for myself and enjoying what I did. But I kind of also let work take over my life. I was working every minute. I
mm.
was doing this, I was doing that. There was no separation, there was no boundaries. And quite honestly, it was unhealthy. It was something that I had to realize, like, it's okay to stop working today. The task list will never be completely done. You're not going to cross everything off. And as soon as I was able to kind of come to that realization that, like, it's okay to leave something for tomorrow as long as you're proud of what you've got done today, I feel like I was actually able to step into my own as an entrepreneur and as somebody that has something that I'm proud of that I'm putting out into the world.
So how long do you think it took you to figure that out, to make that transition in your mind?
Yeah, honestly, man, I think I'm still working that out.
Yeah.
Things go in cycles, right? And I would say it was probably at least 1 year or maybe even 18 months of realizing like this is unsustainable. I'm working too much. I'm up at 4 a.m. I'm working until 10:30 at night before after the kids go to bed and the whole thing. And it's not sustainable. It's not healthy. It's not a viable long-term solution.
Yeah.
And I still get in that cycle where, I'll just be all about work and I'll let other things slide. And as soon as I realize like that's what's happening, I've realized, okay, here's kind of the guardrails. Let's kind of figure out how I can get more balance so I can be the best self for my family as well as my best self for my clients.
Right. Okay. So tell me like a common myth about your job or expertise, a little bit more of a fun road we can travel here for a minute.
Love that. So I'm in marketing and
Yeah.
branding. I would say that the most common myth in regards to websites, as a specific example, is what I call the field of dreams fallacy. So we all know the field of dreams, right? You build it and they'll come. A lot of people think that you build a new website and customers are going to come knocking, right? They're going to be proud. They're going to love it. They're going to be all about this new website. Customers are come knocking. Business is going to go off the charts. Fortunately, that's just not the case.
You're telling me this now after I signed the contract?
Well, it's not just the product, right? It's not just the property, the website as the property that brings in business. It's all of the other elements, right? We've
Right.
got the website as your catch point, your funnel, but you've got everything that happens before somebody gets to the website that's also equally as important as the website property itself. So just building a new website is not going to bring in business. Building in a new website that is built with your customers in mind, with the right messaging and the right call to actions is extremely important. But equally important is the stuff that comes before somebody gets to the website. Your social media marketing, your advertising, your branding, your contents that you write on your blog, social media, LinkedIn, YouTube, and so on. That's as important as the website itself. So that's, I think, a common fallacy. And as soon as you're able to kind of come to that realization that just throwing money at a website or an app or a physical storefront or anything like that is going to change your life, and realize that it's just part of the equation, it's part of that flywheel, that's when you're going to start to see success.
Long gone are the days where you buy a yellow page ad and that's fine. Do you find most of your customers are in the younger scape? Or are they older businesses trying to transition into the new world?
Great question. So the place that we fit at Zangardi Studio the most effectively is with businesses that have a strong marketing need, but don't have but they may not have the marketing resources internally to execute upon them. So that could be a small business that is scaling up and is very product, very sales focused, or it can be a long established business that hasn't really focused so much on marketing and branding to get to where they are now, but they have marketing ideas that they can't maybe perhaps manage internally because they don't have a marketing manager or a marketing staff. So we tend to really fit well in those type of roles where we can just become the marketing department for a company. And we'll develop the marketing strategy and the brand strategy, the messaging and positioning, the marketing assets, whether that's a video, whether that's a website or whatever, and then can even work with them long-term on creating content and managing social and buying ads and running Google AdWords and kind of the whole gamut of digital marketing, and just really allow for them to focus on what they do best, which might be sales, it might be product development, or what have you. So we get to do what we're great at, they get to do what they're great at, and we leverage one another and build from there.
Well, that's awesome to come along as a partner in those types of roles. So what would you say is the biggest challenge that marketers like yourself are facing right now?
I would say that the most impactful challenge or impactful change in the marketing atmosphere today, as of 2021, 2022, is that we are in a transition period online from Web 2.0, which is your social media ads, it's your user generated content. It's your peer-to-peer communication, that type of stuff, into Web 3.0, which is talking about things like NFTs, cryptocurrency, blockchain, decentralized environments, and everything like that. The challenge that we as marketers are going to have is it's just a new wild west. We're moving into days that are more like what happened between so it was probably actually 2007, 2008 up to like 2012 than we have been in the last 10 years. So things
Wow.
are really going to be changing the way the internet works, the way brands communicate with people online, and the way that people interact on social media. It's all changing, and marketers and small business owners need to really stay up to date and current with what's happening in the kind of changing times of Web 3.0.
So maybe that and begs another question here. As a marketer, what do you think is the most important personality strength that a marketer needs to have to be ready for changes like this and to continue to be relevant in an ever-changing market?
Yeah, curiosity. For me,
Okay.
it's curiosity. Being comfortable with the uncertain and being curious to find out as much as you can about it. If you play by the same old rule books, this, in my opinion, this is in all industries, but if you play by the same old rule book always and you never change, and you never adapt, and you're never curious about what else is out there, you're not going to evolve. But if you are open and curious and you chase those curiosities and you find ways to apply that in your brand, your business, your life, that's when you're going to see the most growth and the most reward.
So you've talked about where you came from and kind of where you're going to, where the industry is going. And if you're going to stay in the industry, you're going to carry that way. But I'm sure
Right.
you've had some type of mentors along the way. Who has been that mentor, that person that you can really point to and say, they're one of the reasons I'm here?
So for me, I think that my network is the collective mentor that I've had in my career. I make a big point. Nate, you mentioned that we met at a networking event, and I agree it was a little bit of a sketchy event. It was kind of, I would say, poorly managed, but
But you
yeah,
never know who you're going to meet. So,
that's exactly right. That was almost 4 years ago. You and I met. I think it was maybe mid 2018, I want to say. And here we are today in 2021, 2022. So for me, it's my entire network. I really place a lot of value on building strong relationships with people that I trust and that I know and that I like, um, and and leveraging those relationships and the expertise of people within my network. So I know somebody who's great at sales. I speak with them frequently. I know somebody who's amazing at operational kind of business back of house type stuff. And he and I speak together frequently on, on kind of the operational side of my business. And for me, like that network, that net that has been placed around me has been absolutely invaluable. And it's something that I'm always looking to build to grow further.
yeah, mentored by your network. I like that a lot. So through your journey, was this something that you really wanted? You wanted to be a marketing professional? Would you say when you look at the beginning of your career to now, and you're still
Yeah.
on the earlier side of it, is this what you wanted to do? Is this what you wanted to be when you grow up?
What's funny is I had originally set out to go to college to become an engineer. So I went to engineering school. Well, actually, I never got to engineering school, but I went with that aspiration in mind. And during my freshman year of college, I realized I don't think I want to do this. I want to do something a little bit different. So I kind of bounced around a little bit just between like all the prereq courses and like the general education courses. And I would say it was maybe the beginning of my junior year, I was taking some business courses and I realized like, I really like this. I can mesh my creative side. As I mentioned, I was into photography, still am today, but at the time I was very into photography and art and design. I was really interested in what was happening in the Web 2.0 space. This was when Twitter was really becoming hot. This was when Facebook was ballooning into what they've become today. This was when Instagram was really just in its infancy. We had things like Foursquare, we had things like all the check-in apps, and I was just fascinated with what was happening in Silicon Valley, in New York City, in Austin, Texas, in these different startup hubs. And I started taking some business courses and realized, okay, marketing is where it's at for me. I can mesh my creative side with my analytical side. I can, really be part of something new and something that is, kind of the path is being laid in front of us as we go. And that's when I went all in on marketing and business. Did I see myself as being a small business owner? No, I really didn't. I saw myself as, working in a creative component of a marketing, either company or in a creative role in a marketing department. But here I am today. Again, chased my curiosities and found myself here.
Yeah, and so that maybe begs a question for me. You're somebody who probably you've made your own rule list, made your own playbook when you're an entrepreneur. So, what's maybe one thing that other marketers or people in your expertise that almost nobody agrees with you on that you really think that's you're going to stand your ground on that?
Yeah. Boy, I don't know if I would say nobody will agree with me on this, but I would say this is a contentious debate in the industry. I actually guess I have two things. I'll start with a contentious debate, and it's very specific and very niche, but that's okay. One is that the in website development and website design, it's the absolute most critical thing to start with your content framework, and if at all possible, start with your content before you before you design your website's layout. Because if you design something and it looks great, but then you have to play Mad Libs with content to make it fit, right? Or you have to really whittle it down or really expand upon something, it's not going to be as strong as an end product. On the flip side, if we start with the content framework and the overall kind of layout, look and feel of how we want somebody to progress through a website, and then we then we design around that construct, that framework, we're going to have something that's a much more cohesive end product at the end of the day. So, a lot of times people will start with design and then they'll write content around it. It works, but I don't think it's as effective. But if you're able to start with messaging strategy and customer strategy, and then lay on top of that actual messaging and content, and then from there, we put it together into a finely tuned, nicely designed package, that's when you're going to see the best success. And that's when your customers are going to have the easiest time using your website.
So maybe it's that analytical engineering mind that you really needed to bring something different to the table for marketing.
I think it could be. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you talked a lot about time management. So I think you have a lot to say about time management. So what would you say is your favorite productivity hack for other business leaders or entrepreneurs?
Oh boy. I recently started doing this about 12 months ago. I call it my week at a glance. So what I do is every Sunday, I spend about 30 minutes or so just looking ahead at the week and looking behind at the week, prior. And I write out, what's the three things that I want to accomplish every day. And then I also pepper in the commitments that I have coming up. So I know what my week looks like before I even start the week on that next Monday. So my week at a glance keeps me honest because I know I've set my intentions for like the 2 to 3 most important things I want to accomplish every day. And I've paired that and kind of hitched that against my my commitments for the week. So for example, this week, we're recording this here on a Friday. So last Sunday when I did my week at a glance, I knew I was doing this podcast on Friday. I didn't schedule anything else prior to this meeting just so I could be fresh and I'm not going to be frustrated or high strung or anything like that. And I also knocked off my like important to-dos for the day from 3 things just down to 1 on top of this podcast. And that's because I need to manage my own internal expectations. And I know that after this call, after this podcast recording is done, I'm not going to have an entire day's worth of work to actually achieve 3 big impactful things. But I do know I have 1 thing to do. And if I cross that 1 thing off today, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to roll into the weekend tomorrow and feel like this day was a success. So I used to wing it. I just, whatever came to me, I would just do it, right? Squeaky wheel gets the grease. And I was playing firefighter, just putting fires out all day long. And I'd look back at my day and be like, what the heck did I achieve? Like I crossed a lot of stuff off my to-do list, but like, did I actually push the needle forward on anything that's important? And by keeping myself honest with this week at a glance, I'm able to much more often feel good about what I accomplished during the day.
That's awesome. So are you a get up and go early kind of guy? Or are you a night owl worker?
I'm a get up and go kind of guy. I wake up early. I actually spend my first couple hours of the day doing like me time stuff. So I wake up early. I meditate typically for between 10 to 25 minutes or so in the morning, 10 if it's a rough one, and 25 if I'm in the flow. I run with my dog in the morning, and then I get my workout in, all before getting the kids up and getting them off to school. Once they're done, I typically sit down to work at, a pretty standard time, 9 a.m. But by that point, I've really set my intention for the day, and I'm able to hit the ground running.
Hmm. Awesome. Yeah, that's just having those schedules and that structure in place as an entrepreneur is important because there's nobody there to set that for you.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the most underrated tool that you use for your job?
Wow. Underrated tool. Oh gosh. Pen and paper.
Oh, really? Okay.
Pen and paper. Yeah. I mean, I'm a digital nomad, right? Like I work anywhere and everywhere. Fine. I'm on I'm a laptop and iPad kind of guy working from my phone. That's fine. But something about just writing stuff on paper, I just blank sheets of paper with notes for me is the way to get something out of my head and into some type of format that I can then work on. It doesn't stay that way forever. Like I never will look at the paper after I write on it and then I transcribe it into like a digital note system. But for me, just getting that paper and that pen flowing is so much more effective than typing up something on a keyboard. Something about the nature that like you can do stuff that is not just writing words down. Like I can sketch out a wireframe or some type of diagram or something like that on paper, but I could never do that as effectively and as loosely and creatively on a digital method. So I'll do it on paper all day long, and that to me is my most underrated tool.
I was taught that in psychology, they actually encourage you to write and draw. It's multi-sensory. I'm not a psychologist, but that's important for our minds to have that. Computers have kind of removed that from us. So I can concur on that. I have notebooks as an IT guy. People
Yeah,
are looking at me with this paper and pencil. I show up to the meeting, but I remember better when I work that way. So
I I 100% agree, and that's exactly how it works for me. I'll never look at the paper again after I transcribe it or I move it, but it still helps me, and I'm able to get much more done a lot quicker.
yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so you're a marketer. You love to be the marketing guru, but what occupation other than what you're doing right now would you like to try?
Oh wow, creative question for a creative guy. What occupation would I like to do that's not in marketing? I have a twinkling of an idea to work on some type of product collective in my life. What I mean by product collective is get together with a group of other creative thinkers, other creative people to actually create a physical product to improve somebody's life. I have no idea what that product would be. I have no idea who those people would be, but that's just been something in my life, a theme in my life that like I always come back to like, I'd like to do something physical. Like I'd love to actually be able to say, I made this, my team made this, and it's out there in the world. Everything that I do is very, amorphous. It's stuff that exists but maybe not physical. It's content writing, it's website development, it's strategic thinking, and that improves other people's lives and their businesses. But like creating something that can actually be held, touched, used, I'd say that's something I'd like to do one day.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. So let's hope this doesn't happen, but if your business ended and you were going to start another business, what business would that be?
I would say that if my business ended tomorrow, um, and I had to start from scratch, I would probably just go to my network, talk to the top, let's say 20 or 30 people that I trust and that I relate with, and I would just say, what problems are you having? What's going on in your life? What's going on in your business? What's
Mm.
going on in your work day? And I suspect if I talk to 30 people, I would find a common theme. My curiosity would then get the better of me and I would set out to solve that problem. So I don't have an answer for you on what that would be, but that's how I would figure it out.
That's awesome. Use your network, be curious, find those things out. Okay, a couple rapid fire questions as we're getting down to the end here, Patrick. What are 3 books that you would recommend to the audience and why?
Okay, so the first book I would recommend is Start With Why by Simon Sinek. I love that book. I read it maybe twice a year, probably. And Start With Why really changed the way that I think about messaging and the way I think about positioning for my company and for the clients that I work with. So it kind of flipped the switch in the way that I think about marketing and the way I think about branding. As an aside, there's an amazing video. It's probably 10 years old at this point, of Simon Sinek talking about what he calls the golden circle. And in the YouTube video, if you just look up Simon Sinek Golden Circle or Simon Sinek Start With Why on YouTube, you'll find it. He talks about how the best brands don't tell you what they do, but they tell you why they do it. So the example he gives is that Apple computers, they don't create computers or iPhones or whatever. They help creative people to make an impact in their world, in their life. And that resonates with people on a much deeper level than just saying this is a fast computer or this is a cool phone. It's more or less saying like, we're going to help you to use this product to make your life better. So I spoke really long on that one, long-winded about Start With Why, but I love that. I also love a book by Aubrey Marcus. It's called Own the Day, Own Your Life. That's something that I took a lot of insight out of and helped me to really figure out, how do I make my day and my routine something that works for me and not against me. And just a book that I also like to pick up a lot is Tools of the Titans by Tim Ferriss. It's a lot of excerpts of his interviews that he does from his podcast. And, it's got really good insights about how business leaders and creative people and entrepreneurs and athletes kind of structure their days and their lives and the things that they use to do the amazing things they do. And I love that book.
Well, that is awesome. Okay. I'm starting a business today. What is one word of wisdom you would give me?
Be curious.
Be curious. Great. Okay. And Patrick, I appreciate you being on the Journey podcast today. I've asked you a lot of questions. What's one question that you wish I would have asked you?
Oh boy. Okay. One question I wish you would have asked me. Gosh, I don't know. You've asked a lot of good questions. I guess you could have asked me, what's my favorite color, man? Like,
Yeah. Let's talk about that. What is your
you
favorite?
you grow up and people stop asking that.
Yeah, right.
I don't know what my answer with that would be,
That's
but
a
my
tough one
brand,
as a marketer, right?
it is. My brand colors are black and purple, so I'm gonna go with purple. I like purple.
Purple. Yeah. If you say the wrong color, some of your clients are going to come back and be like, "Hey, man, what the deal?"
Why'd you
So,
make my logo with a color you don't like?
yeah, exactly. Well, Patrick Zangardi with Zangardi Studios, it's always a pleasure to talk with you and spend some time with you. Tell our audience where they can find you online. Remind them of who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. So the best way to find me is on my website. It's zangardi.com, or on LinkedIn. You can look up Patrick Zangardi. There's not very many of us. It's a pretty unique name. So if you just type in Zangardi on Google, you'll find me or one of my cousins, I'm sure. But that's the easiest way to find me and to engage with me.
Well, Patrick Zangardi, it's been a pleasure spending time with you today, listening about your journey, and I appreciate you being on the Journey podcast. Go check him out at zangardi.com. You're never going to forget that name. It's a memorable name. Thanks so much, Patrick, for your time, and thanks for being on the Journey podcast.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.